Do you believe that love can be born from savagery? Can the heart of a beast beat in the same rhythm as that of a human? This story begins with a scream. Not a scream of fear, but of life. The sun was already beginning to disappear behind the mist-covered mountains. The humid air smelled of living earth, and the trees whispered with the wind, as if the entire forest were breathing. In the middle of this sanctuary, a young pregnant woman named Lara walked with trembling steps. She had fled from something, from someone, but all she knew was that she needed to get away from the world of men. Her torn dress betrayed days of escape. Her hands shook, her body begged for rest, but something inside her made her keep going, an almost animal instinct for survival. She didn't know it, but she was being watched. From the treetops, among leaves and shadows, a giant with dark fur followed her with golden, attentive eyes. It was Kong, the lord of the jungle, the king of a territory where no man dared enter twice. For years, he had lived alone, surrounded by sounds and silences, learning to fight, hunt, and defend his domain. But when he saw Lara, something in his chest roared differently. It wasn't anger, nor hunger. It was something else, something he had never felt before, the urge to protect. For days, Kong followed her unseen. He watched when she tried to light a fire with wet branches. He watched when she cried alone, hugging her belly, as if apologizing to the baby for bringing it into this cruel world. Kong did not understand the tears, but he felt the sound of them pierce his soul. For the first time, the silence of the forest seemed painful. When night fell, the rain poured down heavily. Lara took shelter under a large rock, trembling. A thunderbolt lit up the darkness, and she saw two golden pupils staring at her. Her heart froze. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice weak. The answer came only in the sound of heavy breathing, close, almost human. Slowly the shadow emerged from the darkness. A colossal gorilla, nearly 3 meters tall, stood before her. Rain streamed off his black fur, his gaze fixed. She screamed. Kong did not move. He merely lowered his head and extended his hand. In his palm lay wild fruits. Lara stepped back, but hunger and fatigue won. She took one of the fruits, and in that instant, between fear and gratitude, something changed. The king of the jungle and the lost woman made a silent pact. In the following days, he stayed nearby. He did not allow her to come too close, but he never left her alone. He hunted, she gathered fruits. Unknowingly, they began to understand each other. Sometimes she spoke to herself as if confiding in the wind. Kong did not understand her words, but he understood the tone. The soft sound of her voice calmed his instinct. One afternoon, Lara went to the river to fetch water. The ground beneath her feet trembled. The sound of something slithering cut the silence. She stopped. The surface of the water froze, and then the serpent appeared. Enormous, with black scales and glowing eyes, a monster that seemed to have come from another era. She raised her head and hissed, threatening it. Lara stepped back, panting. She protected her belly with her hands and screamed. That was enough. Kong's roar echoed through the forest, powerful and wild. He appeared through the trees like a lightning bolt. The ground shook as his feet touched the soil. He stopped between Lara and the serpent, his gaze blazing like fire. The serpent coiled, ready to strike. Kong beat his chest, roaring with force. The entire forest seemed to hold its breath. The serpent lunged. Kong grabbed it by the scales and threw it against a tree. The impact sounded like thunder. The monster wrapped around him, squeezing, trying to crush the king of the jungle. Lara shouted the name she had just given him, "Kong!" without knowing why. It was a cry straight from the heart. Kong roared, the sound cutting through the forest. With the strength of 1,000 thunders, he tore the serpent's coils apart, grabbed it by the head, and hurled it against the rocks. The monster writhed, trying to escape, but the gorilla advanced with fury. The fight was brutal, every strike echoing like the heartbeat of the jungle itself. Until finally, silence returned. The serpent's body lay motionless, crushed among the roots. Kong's breathing was heavy. He slowly turned to Lara, covered in wounds and splattered with mud. Their eyes met. Neither moved a muscle. Between them, there was fear, yes, but also something new. Respect. Lara stepped forward. Carefully, she touched Kong's enormous arm. He did not recoil. The jungle, which had seemed so hostile before, suddenly felt serene. The rain stopped. Only the sound of the wind through the leaves remained, and there in that instant, in the living heart of the forest, a woman and a beast recognized each other. Not as prey and predator, but as lost souls who had found one another. Kong remained still, watching Lara with that deep, almost human gaze. His heavy breathing mingled with the soft sound of the wind, and for a moment the forest seemed suspended in time. Lara, her heart still racing, let her hand rest on his arm a few seconds longer. It was warm, firm, and pulsing with life. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice trembling. She did not expect an answer, but something in Kong's gaze showed that he understood. Not the words, but the feeling. That touch awakened something within him, something he had never felt, a powerful desire to stay close to her. It was not just instinct. It was a silent, wild, pure bond. Exhausted, Lara sat on a nearby rock. Kong approached slowly and sat beside her. Despite his colossal size, he tried to be gentle. The woman looked at him with a mixture of fear and fascination. Their breathing gradually calmed. The gorilla, sensing her fatigue, stood up and disappeared into the foliage. For a moment, Lara thought he had gone. But minutes later, Kong returned, bringing large leaves and flowers, and placed them before her. She smiled, moved. "You're taking care of me," she murmured, caressing her belly. "And him too." Kong tilted his head, observing her gesture of touching her womb. His gaze softened. He did not understand what was inside, but he sensed it was something fragile, something that needed to be protected at all costs. In the following days, a new rhythm formed between the two. Lara found shelter in a cave, and Kong began patrolling the area every night. He brought fruits, roots, and sometimes small prey. In return, she spoke to him as if to an old friend. She told stories of the city, of how the outside world was loud, cold, full of people but soulless. Kong listened attentively, as if every sound of her voice soothed him. One morning, she woke to the sound of heavy footsteps and rustling leaves. Kong had returned with a large bundle of dry branches. Suddenly, Lara realized he was trying to imitate what she did with the fire, stacking branches and watching the flames, fascinated. When she lit the fire, his golden eyes reflected the light hypnotically. He extended his hands, feeling the warmth, and let out a low sound, almost like a purr. She laughed. "Are you afraid of the fire?" she asked, laughing even more when he took a small step back. "It's okay, I was too." Gradually, the jungle stopped being just a refuge. It became a shared home for two completely different beings, united by solitude and instinct. Lara began to realize that in the midst of nature, Kong was not a beast. He was a living part of it. When the wind blew, its sound seemed to respond to his breathing. When she walked among the trees, she felt as if the forest accepted her for being beside him. One afternoon, she found him watching the sunset atop a hill. The sight was breathtaking. The giant with black fur silhouetted against the orange sky, the breeze moving the leaves around him like veils. Lara climbed with difficulty, leaning on the rocks, and stood beside him. Neither spoke. They simply watched the horizon. The baby stirred inside her, and she smiled. "He feels you," she said, placing her hand on her belly. "I think he knows you're our protector." Kong looked at her, and with a slow, almost reverent movement, placed his huge hand on the ground near hers. For a moment, their fingers almost touched. A deep silence enveloped the moment, and Lara realized that this feared being was in fact the purest creature she had ever known. But not everything in the forest was peaceful. Something moved in the shadows, beyond Kong's territory. The scent was different, strange, threatening. Kong sensed it first. His keen nose caught the odor of smoke and metal. Men. Unaware, Lara only noticed the tension in the air. Kong began pacing in circles, restless. The protective instinct returned with force. He knew what it meant. The world she came from was approaching, and it did not come in peace. Calm was about to be broken. The wind began to shift. The sound of birds ceased, and even the ever-busy insects seemed to disappear. Lara felt the weight of the silence. Kong, standing, sniffed the air uneasily. His golden eyes, once calm, now glimmered with alertness. He stepped toward the valley, nostrils flaring. Suddenly, the distant echo of human voices cut through the forest. Lara rose with difficulty, her heart racing. "No, it can't be," she whispered. She recognized the sound, the cadence of boots on the ground, the metallic click of weapons, the harsh tone of commands. They were hunters, men like those she had seen months before, destroying trees, hunting everything that moved. Kong let out a low, guttural roar, as if saying he knew what was coming. He turned to her, stared intently, and made a strange gesture. He pointed to the back of the cave, signaling her to hide. Lara hesitated, but her maternal instinct spoke louder. She ran to the shelter, pressing her belly with her hands. Outside, Kong remained still for a few seconds, listening. The footsteps drew closer. 3, maybe 4 men. The smell of gunpowder and sweat was strong. "This is the beast's territory," a voice said. "It's been seen in this area. Be careful." Kong clenched his fists. The trees seemed to bow before him. When the men entered the small valley, he was already watching from above, hidden among the leaves. Rifles glinted. One of them kicked the ground, and a metallic echo resonated. Lara, inside the cave, covered her mouth to avoid screaming. The first shot broke the air. The sound echoed like thunder. Kong roared, leaping from the treetops like a lightning bolt. The ground shook as he landed among the hunters, dust rising like a wave. The men screamed. Some tried to flee, but the gorilla was fast. With a single blow, he disarmed the first, hurling him against a tree trunk. The second tried to shoot, but Kong grabbed him by the chest and threw him away. The third, panicked, aimed his weapon directly at the cave. Lara saw the barrel glint and reflexively screamed. It was enough. Kong turned with a roar that made the leaves vibrate. He leapt among the rocks and, before the shot rang out, struck the man with force. The body flew, lifeless. Silence returned, heavy and tense, broken only by the gorilla's breathing. Lara stepped out of the cave, her eyes brimming with tears. "Kong," she called, her voice trembling. He turned slowly, panting, his chest rising and falling, like a warrior who had just faced his own hell. She approached, ignoring fear, ignoring everything. She touched his arm, dirty with blood and mud. "You saved me." "Again." Kong looked at her, his gaze softer than ever. The sun began to break through the clouds, and the golden light enveloped him, as if the forest itself recognized him as a guardian. He lowered his head and pressed his forehead to hers. For a moment the world stopped. It was the purest gesture that could exist between two such different creatures. But the danger was not yet over. The wounded hunters fled, carrying the news. There was a living woman, and the legendary gorilla, the invincible beast of the forest. They would return, and not alone. Lara knew this. She looked toward the horizon, feeling the baby stir inside her. "They will come back, Kong. And they will hunt you," she whispered. He raised his head, gazing at the sky. The birds began to sing again, as if announcing a brief peace. But his golden eyes said otherwise. The war was only beginning. That night, Lara could not sleep. She felt the contractions starting, light, spaced out. Her body warned her that the moment was approaching. Kong, restless, prowled around the cave, alert to every sound. When she looked at him one last time before closing her eyes, she saw something that made her smile. It wasn't fear, it was care. The king of the jungle, who had once lived alone, now had a purpose, to protect not only the woman, but the life she carried. The moon rose high, silvering the trees. The forest seemed to wait, silent. The coming night would mark the birth not only of a child, but of a legend. The night fell heavy, humid, shrouded by a blanket of clouds that hid the stars. The wind blew through the trees, carrying the sweet scent of flowers mixed with the approaching rain. Inside the cave, Lara moaned softly, leaning against the cold stones. The contractions came strong, rhythmic. Her body trembled, sweat running down her face. Kong was there, at the entrance of the grotto, on guard. His gaze fixed on the darkness, his body tense. He knew something was happening to her, felt her pain in every sound, in every labored breath. The jungle seemed to feel it too. The leaves swayed slowly, the air thickened, as if the heart of the forest beat in the same rhythm as the woman's. A scream cut through the silence, and Kong turned. Lara cried, her body arched, hands clutching her belly. He approached cautiously, his gaze full of confusion and concern. Instinct told him to protect her, but he did not know how. He sat beside her, trying to convey calm with his presence alone. Lara breathed rapidly, her voice hoarse. It's coming," she whispered. She looked into his eyes, and in that instant there was no more fear, only trust. Kong tilted his head, emitting a deep, almost mournful sound, as if saying, "I am here." Time lost all shape. Minutes felt like hours. The rain began to fall outside, drumming softly on the leaves. And then, between pain and effort, a new sound emerged, the sharp, fragile, pure cry of a newborn child. Lara collapsed in relief, tears mingling with the rain running down the stones. Kong remained still for a moment, eyes wide, hearing that sound for the first time. That cry pierced his heart like thunder. Slowly he approached. Lara, exhausted, held the baby wrapped in makeshift cloths. "It's a boy," she whispered with a tired smile. Do you want to see?" She lifted the little one in her arms, bringing him close to the giant. Kong leaned in, his enormous face just inches from the child. The baby, curious, reached out his tiny hand and touched his fur. Kong did not move. He simply closed his eyes and let out a low, soft sound, like a song. It was the first gesture of tenderness from a beast, and in that instant something was sealed. An invisible bond among the three, woman, child, and beast. In the following days, the forest seemed different. The sun rose more calmly, birds sang near the cave. Kong, ever vigilant, sought food and water. He watched Lara rock the baby, and sometimes when she slept, he would sit at the entrance, observing them both, like an ancient guardian. Lara began to call him gently. "Kong, come here," she said, extending her hand. He approached hesitantly, but with growing confidence. He had learned that her touch brought no danger, and that this little being, the baby, was precious. One morning, Lara placed the baby in his arms. For a moment, the world stopped. The gorilla froze, unsure of what to do, but instinctively held him carefully, his gaze full of curiosity. The baby looked at him without fear, with the same serene eyes as his mother. Lara watched the scene, her heart tight. "I think he recognizes you," she said, smiling. "Maybe he knows you're his protector." Kong lifted his eyes to her. For a moment, she saw something in them that was impossible to describe, a calm, almost human glow. It was love, but a primitive, pure, wordless love. Weeks passed, and the bond between them grew. Kong built shelters with larger branches, brought fresh fruits, protected the cave's surroundings with marks on the ground, signals to keep predators away. Lara recovered, cared for the baby, and spoke to Kong as if they were lifelong companions. He did not respond with words, but every glance, every gesture was a silent reply. Yet behind that peace, something still moved in the forest. The men had not forgotten. Stories of the monster living with a woman and a child spread among hunters, explorers, and the greedy. What was love and protection to Lara was a myth to the outside world, something to be captured. And as the full moon rose again, silvering the leaves, Kong lifted his gaze to the horizon. He felt it. The danger would return. Lara, beside him, rocking the baby, noticed the distant look in the gorilla's eyes. "You feel it too, don't you?" she whispered. "They will come for us," Kong answered with a low, deep roar, one that seemed to promise the impossible, that as long as he breathed, no harm would touch the woman and the child. And so, under the silvery glow of the moon, the king of the jungle silently swore to protect what had become his new reason for existing.